I didn't have a question, but I also wanted to commend Colorado for being the first state to have DPR regulations. That is phenomenal. In California, we have a handful of DPR projects that have the funding, have the feasibility study, have been through the planning, are ready to go, but our state has been very delayed in setting these regulations, and it's becoming problematic. It's just taking a very, very long time. And like Brandy said, the science is there, so kudos to you guys for being leaders on that. That's phenomenal.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
I was curious, we hear a lot about PFAS, the family of chemicals that's very hard to get out, the forever chemicals. Does the processes that are used for treating wastewater, make it drinking water, does it take PFAS out?
Yes, it does, in fact. There's a couple of different treatment trains that are in our, what we call our policy associated with our regulation, and if followed and operated properly would take PFAS down to non-detect levels. So essentially not there.
So compared to some of our drinking water systems right now that do have PFAS detected in it, it's actually, at least for that constituent, it's actually cleaner.
Well, and I think that as the new federal rules have come about, and we've been working pretty closely with some of our dischargers as well, I think we're going to start to see that technology put into place in some of the conventional drinking water treatment. So it's not far behind.
Okay. What can you describe briefly what the technology is?
Unfortunately, I couldn't. If I tried, you guys would just laugh at me. So let's just leave it at that. Yeah.
All right. Do we have some questions from members of the audience? And let's send. We need to send a microphone around, and I'm not sure quite where they are. Okay, here in the back here.
I need to give a little background before I get to my question, if I could. I take issue with what Peter said earlier as far as water rights of the Animus being basically an unlimited supply. At the time the Animus Plata was built, there were 1,100 approximately, and it's been a long time ago, so I may be off a little, junior water rights to that project. As everyone in the room knows, the project basically is not, or Project Water is not being used. But when it does start being used, there is going to be a pumping rate on the Animus River that when the river is short, those 1,100 water rights in the Animus system may be dried up. Farmington, Aztec, and Bloomfield all basically have their source of water as the Animus River. New Mexico's rights on the river have been ignored by Colorado. I could go on with several different examples. I'll get to the question or the comment. When is, and this would be a prime opportunity now for the water reuse to finally take a look at the elephants in the room that are facing the Animus in the future, which everyone is ignoring now. When will you begin looking at that, especially with water reuse, say with the city of Durango? New Mexico, when the water is short, has a saying, we hope Durango flushes twice. We are reusing Colorado water. When is Colorado going to look at this issue? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think what I was referring to is that the Animus doesn't have unlimited supply, but that in comparison to the amount of water rights in Colorado, we rarely ever have a call on the river. But I understand your point that there are certainly water users downstream that are very interested in being able to utilize that water, and they're on short supply. Another question, maybe can we get a mic down here? I see Steve up front here.
Hello? Hello? Oh, okay.
Well, hold on a second there. Because I know they're recording it. That's why I was trying to get the microphone down here.
Okay. I was handed the mic, so I'll just go next. Hello.
Okay, sure.
My question is for Jolene Walsh. You were talking about how the Bureau of Reclamation was a really important partner in ensuring that water recycling was implemented in your district. And I'm curious about the barriers to Bureau of Reclamation funding and partnering that you might have experienced, and the successes of that process, and how that maybe could be reflected in Colorado as well for implementing recycling of water.
That's a great question. The Bureau has been a partner for us on the technology side. We have done many.
Excuse me, Julie. I'm going to ask, because they're recording, pull the mic a little
Oh,
closer.
sure.
That'd be great. Thank you.
The Bureau of Reclamation has been a phenomenal partner for us in a number of ways. One is through technical studies. They have helped us do a number of pilot studies, testing new technologies that we were looking at to use in our systems. And then the other is through funding, through Title 16, as Helen mentioned. It's a 25-75 split, and that funding really helped us leverage our local resources to do things that we would not have had the resources to do otherwise. So Water Smart, Title 16, and then really just the partnership on pilot studies and testing out technology have been the main ways we've worked with the Bureau. In terms of obstacles, none come to mind, but I will get with you after if I think of some. They've always been a really easy partner to work with, and it's really, we've had a lot of great collaboration.
Great, thanks. Question, Steve?
Okay, anybody? Yeah, there it goes. Brandy, the potable reuse, can you do it without doing reverse osmosis that has such a large amount of reject water?
Hello? Yes. Yes, and this is the one where I can't explain it except to say that the process essentially breaks down the chemicals to smaller and smaller pieces and then filters them out. So it basically breaks it down to the point that it's no longer PFAS and it's not harmful anymore. But I couldn't explain it any further than that for you.
But it doesn't have a lot of reject water though.
It would still have some reject water. You'd have to. I know there's activated carbon filters that have to be cleaned out and things like that. But it isn't like reverse osmosis where you just have this sludge brine thing that you basically then have a new problem in a different form. It's not the same.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Question, there's one right behind there. Don?
My question is for Jolene and your Eastern Municipal District. Could you give me some sense of the ag rights, seniority, where their sources were? Is it groundwater, Colorado River water? And are they, assuming that they're getting overlaid by continued growth of the municipality? So just some sketch of that dynamic as we're seeing ag turn to city and how long that may last, or to get a better sense of what's going on there.
Sure, that's a great question. So in terms of ag water rights in our area, ag has primarily utilized groundwater. By the time the Colorado River water gets to us, it's too salty for some crops. So not much Colorado River water is used for ag. We keep anticipating ag in our service area to phase out in place of rooftops. And our potable water reuse program is actually the succession plan for our purple pipe system, with the idea that once ag isn't there to use that water, let's turn that water into drinking water. Ag is not slowing down in our region like we expected it to. Strawberries, melon, bok choy, a whole variety of Asian crops and various lettuces and lemongrass. And so the water for our next phase isn't even freed up yet because ag is still going so strong. So in terms of when we anticipate ag to phase out, we thought it would start happening already, but it hasn't. During COVID, ag had greater water demands than we've ever seen. So we will continue to provide ag and support ag until there's a natural transition, but we're not the land use agency. We just support the transition that naturally occurs. Did that answer your question?
A real quick follow-up. Is there going to be not enough water for both ag and the municipal growth?
That's a great question. Our recycled water is a drought-proof supply. I mean, it's sewage that is turned into another resource. So we don't anticipate all new growth since 2015 has the highest standards possible in terms of water efficiency. We've disallowed the installation of new non-functional turf because our region sees it as a wasteful crop. I mean, you irrigate turf and you harvest the green waste and ship it to the landfill. We don't see a place for non-functional turf in our community any longer, and we've disallowed that since 2015. All of the indoor use standards are the highest efficiency possible, so as new growth comes in, we really hold them to an exceptionally high standard, and that is enforced through our water rates. So they actually get an allocation that is about half of the historic allocation of water supply per household.
Question way back here.
I have, does this thing work? Thank you. I have two questions. First is, I live in a very small water area, which is the Mancos area. And we have something that passes for a river that comes through Mancos. And we have a very small watershed. I'm wondering if there is actually money in some of the stuff that I've seen up here for remediation for the watershed in the event of burning. That's the first question. The second question, and I don't know who to apply that to. The second question is, I'm of the understanding that there is no way to take pharmaceutical byproduct, otherwise known as P, out of, make it possible to turn that into potable water. So I would be very interested to know if either the regulations that you've talked about address that issue, or how we plan to address it if it needs to be addressed. Thank you.
I know we're on limited time, so I'll speak really quickly to the first question. Through the bipartisan infrastructure law, we also saw unprecedented amounts of funding for forest health programming in particular, so watershed work there. We saw $30 million invested into Southwest Colorado and Northern New Mexico just recently through the Forest Health Land Collaborative, CFLRP, which is an acronym that I can usually remember. So one note is that each of our counties in the region are working really steadfast on a lot of forest health and forestry program work. And then again, the bipartisan infrastructure law had a phenomenal amount of funding invested into forest health and watershed programming in particular. The last note that I'll share is we are coming up on the reauthorization of the Farm Bill, and so Senator Bennett actually chairs the forestry subcommittee on the Ag Committee, so we have a real champion in our Colorado delegation for on the Farm Bill, which is where we get a lot of our forestry funding as a whole, so definitely worth paying attention to and sharing your thoughts and needs in the community. There's a lot of different opportunities to engage on that level, and Senator Hickenlooper is really, or Senator Bennett is really leading the charge on the Farm Bill for all of us in the region.
Does anyone want to take on the pharmaceutical question?
The short answer is yes. So the technology that I was talking about earlier, either reverse osmosis or the other treatment trains, can remove pharmaceuticals and personal care products from the water and reduce them down to non-detect or safe, what are considered safe levels. What you do with the concentrate after that is a completely different story, though.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sorry, we're going to move on to our next break and move on to our agenda, but if you'd please give a round of applause to our very talented panel.